Morning folks, welcome back to the farm. What's on the books today? Well, it's windy again, no big surprise there. But no, on the agenda today we're going to load up the trailer and we're going to go over to Blum Enterprises and we're going to go pick up some 28% sheep supplement. So the sheep supplement we use is it's a molassified sheep supplement, comes in liquid form, like I said, in a big tote, and we're going to get a tote full as opposed to pails. So last year we got pails, had to make a few trips over there every couple of weeks, was going to get some pails. It makes sense, right? Just buy it in bulk. Maybe it's a little bit cheaper. And well, even if it wasn't cheaper, just the fact that I'm going to drive there and back all the time to consistently go get that stuff ends up in a cost savings. But I expect this winter to have to use more. Now, reason being for that is simple. I mean, when we talked about feed securement for animals, we got 120 square bales, which are this year's cut. So that's good. That looked like good hay. But we also got a bunch of round bales that was last year's cut. Now, just by nature of it sitting, there's going to be some nutrient leaching that, it just happens, right? So in order to increase that feed capacity, that nutrient capacity, we're going to be buying this 28% sheep supplement. And, I was watching a video it was actually an interview with Joel Salatin this morning in regards to the top 10 pitfalls for homesteaders. And one of them is simply not understanding the dietary needs of a lot of the small animals, especially ruminants. Now, if we're just keeping a sheep for the sake of keeping it, say it's a pet, it wanders around the yard, keeps the yard grazed, that kind of thing, and doesn't really have any day-to-day requirements, that's an easy one to manage. But now if you're keeping some sheep with the intent of having a breeding program and raising for meat, then that complicates things a little bit. And not complicates in the sense that it's rocket science, but it does mean there's some additional things to consider. So there's twice in a sheep's life cycle. I use sheep as an example because that's what we have primarily here. There's twice in a sheep's life cycle that it's going to need extra dietary stuff. So once is while it's late gestation, right? So the ewe is actually providing a ton of nutrients late gestation to its lamb or lambs prior to giving birth. And so we want to make sure they have really good feed there. Otherwise, you get a couple of big consequence things could happen: white muscle disease or twin lamb disease, right? And they're both linked to inadequate diet or inadequate nutrient intake, inadequate mineral intake. And the second time is as a lamb, obviously coming off of weaning, going on to pasture, and going in through that growth phase, right? You're growing for the purpose of growing meat. You're not growing for the purpose of, just keeping your yard graze down. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to get that thing to actually put on mass, put on muscle, so it can become a viable food source, a viable source of income down the road. So this is where last year, we were concerned. We'd seen things the year before, actually, with regards to ewe health and lamb thriftiness, and just the overall amount of intensive care that was required to be provided to the animals. So then last year we actually made the decision to add this molasses supplement. So like I said, we were adding it in pails, in a lick tank and free choice and everything like that. And they went to town on it. And I thought, well, boy, I wasn't sure if it was a thing or not, but you immediately see within 2 weeks, you immediately saw better conditioning in the ewes, immediately saw a reduction in wastage of our dry matter feed, because they're not searching for stuff, right? They're not searching for all the stuff that they're not going to get out of that hay bale, because the stuff that they want is actually in that lick tank. So that was an immediate cost savings and benefit. And then downstream of that, when it became lambing season, we had better survivability in our lambs, better conditioning in our lambs, just overall better growth for the lambs in the first 60 to 90 days. And I want to honestly, this lambing season versus lambing season last year was night and day comparison. Last year, I think we lost half a dozen lambs. This year, we only lost one. And the one that we lost was, well, it was most definitely not linked to a dietary thing. What I mean by that is, I mean, sometimes sheep just die because it's Wednesday, right? They, and especially when they're lambs, right? This is where the first 7 days is absolutely critical. Well, the first 24 hours to 7 days really is the most critical, where you're going to see issues with potential hypothermia, like exposure issues, maternal abandonment, or even starvation, you know, and that's the three are all really linked together. That's where you really require the most intensive care for your lambs. But once you get them past that 7-day window, you know, diet is 100% where you can make or break the future of your meat crop. All right, folks, made it home. Still windy. We made it home with their tote of molasses, and you can see I put it on the trailer. I wasn't sure if this thing was going to make it or not. Actually, we got over there, he dropped the tote on the trailer, and this tire was flat. I thought, oh man, what a time to have a flat tire. But lucky enough, he had the air compressor just inside the shop, pumped me up, and it's made it all the way home. So hopefully it was just low just for the sake of being low, and it wasn't low because it has, you know, a nail or a screw or something in there. But yeah, so this is 2,181 pounds in this tank, and that should last us for, you know, weather pending, I guess, pretty much all winter. All right, so let's talk delivery method. How do we get all of that molassified mineral out of that giant tote and into the sheep to give it all those health benefits? Well, we use a tank just like this. I just picked this one up this morning from Blum Enterprises. Like I said, I used one last year, fantastic. We've got 2 rams here now, so we're gonna have 2 distinct breeding flocks. So that's why I picked up a second tank, because then everybody benefits, right? And you know, the one thing I didn't mention earlier when I talked about dietary needs and the 2 times in a sheep's life where it really needs it, there's actually a third one that's pretty important that I shouldn't have forgotten. That's flushing. So that's pre-breeding. You know, a lot of folks flush with grain, and that works quite well. But however, you do need to be conscientious about the amount of grain, especially with sheep, because they can get bloat. So, you know, providing a protein and mineral supplement via way of a lick tank works very, very effectively and actually helps to reduce bloat. Now, this tank, you can see there's nothing in the top. It comes with this, which I had Robin kindly disassemble for me because I just wanted to see how the inner workings of it worked. So this is called an adaptaball. These are very hard to come by. I believe they're manufactured in the UK and they're imported here. And so it's just a floating ball. If you guys remember from the 80s and 90s, we had roll-on deodorant work based on the same principle. The ball rolls and picks up material from underneath, and then the sheep just lick it off the top. Now this goes in the top of here, and when your tank volume goes down to here, you can literally just pour more molasses right in on top of the ball. So this is the tank we picked up today. However, the tank that I got last year actually had a 2-inch NPT fill spout on here, and the dilemma that I had, boy oh boy, because you see a fill spout, then you got to use it, right? So I was like, well, how am I going to pour this 5-gallon bucket into this 2-inch hole? And there was a mad scramble to try and find a funnel, and I couldn't find a good funnel that didn't have oil or, you know, something else on it that I didn't really want touching our food supplements for the animals. Ended up cutting a milk jug, and it worked. It worked, but it was totally unnecessary. In fact, when I realized that there's just a giant 3-inch hole in the center of this tank that if you pour molasses in will quite freely go in there. So I felt like a bit of an idiot once I realized that, but it totally works really, really well. And there's not really a need to have, you know, this fill spout on here. Now, what I did notice with the other one, because we positioned this immediately adjacent to the hay bale, oftentimes the ewes would go and they'd snack on a bale for a little bit, and then they'd come over here and have a couple of little licks. And there's always a little bit of hay that ends up, you know, on the wrong side of the ball. So I was asking Robin this morning today, because there's no fill spout, so if I've got to clean hay and gunk and stuff out of here, how do I do this? And I didn't realize, but if you actually turn this, there's a sweet spot where you can pop that thing free and pop it completely out and rinse your tank out and fill it with clean supplements. So how does this stuff hold up pound for pound, dollar for dollar? Well, that 2,200 pound tote has about 600 liters in it, give or take. And that's 28 cents per pound. And so last winter we were feeding, like I said, we're using pails. So we'd have a 20-liter pail that we put in that lick tank every week for 15 ewes in the test group that we had. Now, what that works out to be is about $1.25 a week per ewe. So we're not breaking the bank by any means. And the beautiful thing about this is it's not a cost on top of what you're already incurring a cost, right? So for every pound of molasses that they're eating, that's a pound of less hay or a pound of less grain that they're ingesting, right? So it is a little bit more expensive, right, than hay. But the thing with it is that this stuff contains all the stuff that your hay doesn't. So all the other supplements, the mineral blocks, all that stuff that you would usually have to buy on top of your hay anyways, you don't have to with this because your feed, it's got it all included anyways. Anyways, of course, I tell you all of this because, well, I know deep down, I know that we're not the only ones that look at the cost of a hay bale and see $150 to $350 and think, wow, like we're not talking sustainability at this point. We're talking sink or swim. We're talking this is an agricultural disaster. And how are we going to get through this? And so as a producer that at one point in time was pretty inexperienced and, you know, didn't really know where to go and had to learn some tough lessons, I'm really hopeful that you guys will be able to watch this and learn from that without having to sit out there and watch your flock diminish or see, you know, low growth or thrifty growth, because this year people are having to make some really tough choices. They're looking at lower food quality, lesser food availability, and this whole molasses thing, you know, it's not going to get you to keep your whole flock, but it is going to get you to keep the flock that you have in good condition, right? So I would highly recommend that you be somewhat merciless in your culling this year. And anybody that's on the B team, and we just did this, we just sent a whole bunch down to Tofield to market. You know, you gotta send away, you know, those that have poor genetics. They got to be cut. This is the year to do it. But if you're going to keep the A team, you want to keep the A team, and this product may just be the thing that helps you get there. That's all. So I'm telling you this because as a fellow producer, I don't want to have anybody else have to go out and spend all their time and not see a return on their investment, because that's, as a homesteader or as a farmer or whatever hobby farmer, whatever it is you class yourself as, you know, to not have return on investment, that's the quickest way to kill your passion, right? To put in all this effort and to not get anything back for it, or even worse, to be going backwards. That's, I mean, man, oh man, that's a soul crusher right there. So let's for a second, let's talk about limiting factors. I mean, the feed for sure this year is going to be a limiting factor, but I don't think this year it's going to overtake time. Right? Time is undeniably our biggest limiting factor. Now, for some people that's the case, for some people it's not. And what I mean by that is, I mean, I'm typically getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? And I do whatever bit of work I got to do before I go off to my regular job. And then when I come home at the end of the day, it's the flight of the bumblebee to do stuff until it's supper time, and then get Charlotte to bed, and then come out and do more stuff, and then go to bed, and then get up in the morning and go to work, right? So there's just not enough hours in the day oftentimes. But I do talk to some individuals, and you know, time is a little less of a limiting factor for them. I think, I mean, if you're not getting up until 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, let's be honest, your biggest limiting factor is probably you. It's not that there's not enough hours in the day, it's just that you're spending them in bed. So this might not be comfortable for everybody to hear, but we have no right to be envious of somebody who gets up and puts in 4 hours worth of work before we even roll out of bed, right? If we are our biggest limiting factor, then we need to look internally at, you know, what's our issue, and not even begin to look at what anybody else has accomplished until we understand what it is that we need to do in order to get there. Anyways, on that note, I gotta go do what I gotta do to get to where I need to be. So I'll let you go for now. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you tomorrow.